Hello, hello guys. So we ended too abruptly without telling you bye. And I don't like to cut off people. So make your last point about you not being an expert in Lean studies.
Yeah, I mean, I know this was a man who worked a lot on uh, differences in intelligence between different groups, and as far as I know, he attributed biological causes to this. I'm not an expert on this. I know this is a very controversial topic, and I just can have an opinion one way or the other. I do agree. This is what I would agree on. First of all, I think intelligence is a useful construct. So I
Yes.
don't agree with people who say that, oh, IQ tests don't measure anything. No, I don't agree with that. I also agree that there's maybe some genetic basis to intelligence. What I may not agree with, Lynn, although again, I'm not an expert, I would have to take a good look at the evidence and so on, is that these are racially distributed, which is, if I'm not mistaken, what Lean insisted on, that some particular racial groups, because of genes, had higher IQ scores than others. I find that doubtful, but again, I would suspend my judgment on that. And the main reason why I find that doubtful is because I'm not sure that race itself is a good biological tool. I mean, I would side more with those who say that race is is problematic as a tool, as a concept. I'm not sure human races truly exist. There are arguments in favor and against, but I tend to weigh more towards those who say that, you know, that race is more of a social construct.
Okay. Well, I have read widely on the issue of racial differences in intelligence. And as you can see, I am black. I am quite black, and it might come it might come as a surprise to some, but I am not impressed by the research of the environmentalists. I don't think that environmentalists are doing high
No,
quality
but again,
research.
but hold on, if I may interrupt you here. Neither am I. I mean, I think environment does play a role in behavior, but also genes.
Yeah.
But what I have my doubt about is whether or not one can neatly segment humanity into blacks, whites, and so on. You say you're black, and of course, I
Yes.
see you. Yes, you're black. But and you say you're from Jamaica, so I
Yes.
suppose that probably your ancestors were slaves from Western Africa, let's say from
Yeah. West
Nigeria,
Africa.
Benin, those countries, right?
Yes.
Yeah, most likely. Now, if I take someone who may look like you, but instead of coming from originally, you know, your ancestors, instead of coming from Nigeria or Ghana or one of those countries, let's say that they would come from Ethiopia or Somalia, they would look more like you than they would look like me. But it may very well be that genetically they have more resemblance to me than to you. So I do think that it is true that race is skin deep. I'm not so sure.
The the Lewontin fallacy that has been disputed by contemporary researchers. And even before
Yeah, I'm aware that
yeah,
Lewontin.
even before I became familiar with his critics, I argued that what we ought to examine are the magnitudes of particular genes rather than the variations by race.
Maybe you're right. I don't know.
And as I
But
said, I am black. I'm just not emotional about the issue any at all. I am not. I have zero emotions about it.
yeah, but the thing is that black,
Yeah.
as far as I can see, it's just a skin color.
Yeah.
And I don't think there is such a thing as a black race. Because again, if I take someone from Ethiopia or Somalia, they will also have black skin and maybe, you know, curly hair and so on. But many other factors and genetic markers you would probably not share with them, and they may as well share with me. So my point is, Yes, you're black, but black itself is just a skin color. I would not say that black is a race. Why? Because I'm not sure that race is a meaningful concept. And if race
No,
is not a
I
meaningful
would just
concept,
say that I am black to highlight the argument that I am not emotionally invested in the debate. So if race is genetic, then it's genetic.
well,
If it's social, it's social. I am
no,
not one of those people who lose sleep over the black, white, like
and
any
as
other.
as it very well should be, because you need to follow the evidence wherever it leads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will not lose any sleep over the black, white, like it's just unfortunate that some of the people who do better research are quite ageable. So I interviewed Richard Nisbet, who's a critic of the genetic explanation, but Richard Nisbet is a psychologist. He writes on personality differences and the differences in personality between Asian and Western peoples, and he's like in his 80s now. And Thomas Sowell, in one of his books, gave a brilliant overview of arguments against the genetic explanation. But again, Thomas Sowell is like over 90. A lot of the younger people who are interested in the debate and who write are too emotional and they don't do good research.
Yes,
That's just
but
my
if I may
opinion.
say something, no, it's fine, but I think you're conflating two things. You can admit that intelligence has a strong genetic base.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, reject the racial explanation. Because
Of
one can
course.
say, well, I can very well say, look, intelligence is strongly grounded in genetics, but it doesn't have the distribution that racialists attributed. So I may very well say, genetic has a strong genetic, intelligence has a strong genetic ground. However, it's not that this particular race has high frequency of genes coding for intelligence, and this particular race has lower. No, it may not be racially distributed, even though one may still accept that intelligence has a strong genetic ground.
And like I read a paper some time ago, and the economist he cited Lee's research, and that research was on the link between not race per se, but the distribution of genetic variants associated with educational attainment. So educational attainment can be a proxy for cognitive ability, but educational attainment and intelligence are also separate concepts. And this research is still in its infancy though, but I'm yet to see a paper saying that Asian Americans or Jewish people have X percentage of genes associated with intelligence and that this percentage is higher in these groups. I'm yet to see such a paper.
And it's very difficult because no genes have been isolated for this type of thing, even for behavior as a whole. I mean, that's why some people are very suspicious of behavioral genetics, although there are other indications, because if you go to twin studies or adoption studies, I mean, I think you can make the inference that particular behaviors have higher heritability rates than others. But it's very difficult to pinpoint a particular sequence in DNA with a particular behavior. That, to my knowledge, that has not been properly found, except in maybe very few specific exceptions. Again, this is not an area of my expertise. I try to every once in a while read about the state of knowledge regarding these issues, but I do agree with you that whatever orientation one takes, it has to be done following the evidence and not because it's politically correct or because I have a particular skin color, therefore I should think this. No, that's irrelevant to the argument.
So what are you working on now?
Right now, I'm working on, I'm more of a philosopher. So right now I'm working on the so-called trolley problem and moral decision making, and how it relates to some aspects of medical ethics. And yeah, it's a very intriguing area of academic inquiry. So I've been working on when is it ethically allowed to turn the trolley in one option or to not throw the trolley towards another option. And I'm also working on population ethics.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you're familiar with Derek Parfit, famous
Yes, I
philosopher.
am. He passed, unfortunately, but
He passed away a few years ago, and I think this was a work of genius. The
yes,
books
I
he
agree.
wrote left very intriguing questions, and I'm trying to work on that a little bit and see what I can contribute to the aspects of population ethics and what he called the repugnant conclusion. That those are the things that are getting my
Well,
attention.
I co-authored two articles with an economist. We sent them to some publications. We're awaiting a response. But other than those articles, I am becoming really interested in the negative social effects of the Industrial Revolution. So years ago, it was a fringe, and by years ago, I'm referring to the period immediately after the Industrial Revolution. It was a fringe assertion that the Industrial Revolution made society so wealthy, and as a result of technological and medical advancement, people with lower IQs and propensity for certain diseases survived into adulthood. That was once a fringe opinion. But then I was exposed to this scientist. He's a legitimate scientist. He's not interested in the black-white IQ gap or racialism. And he's he are and not only is he a legitimate scientist, he's also quantitative. And he argues that because of the Industrial Revolution, we are now suffering from mutational load. So people with less intelligence and other negative social traits, they started to proliferate virgins in the population. Then Edward Newton and Michael Woodley touched on it in a book, and Edward Newton has a new book out on the topic, and I'm taking it quite seriously. Originally, I saw it as a wacky idea, but I think that it's something that we should really consider, especially with the litany of studies done by people who are not ideological any at all, even by people who dislike Richard Lynn, arguing that there's a negative selection for intelligent and pro-social traits in the West. So that's something that I'm researching at the moment. And I'm also
there's a movie. I forgot the name. It's the same
Idiocracy.
guy. Yeah, Idiocracy, that
Yeah,
one. The
yes.
guy who made Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, that's the premise of the movie.
Yes.
And I mean, this was at the origin of the eugenics movement because Darwin's cousin,
Galton, Francis
Galton,
Galton.
yeah, Francis Galton, who's the one who first came up with the idea of eugenics. This was his concern. I mean, I don't know, Lipton. I don't know if they were right or not, but it's definitely something that has worried some people. This idea that, as you say, there is a mutational load, as you call it.
Yeah,
So,
yes, a
yeah.
mutational load. And then I'm also interested in individualism. So individualism is primarily positive. So individualism and IQ are replicable. They robustly predict pro-social outcome, economic growth, innovation, philanthropy, good governance, financial literacy, where outcomes are often positive. But
Yeah.
was their time right? Are we entering a period of anomy? So Michael Woodley of Meany and his co-authors, they have a paper on the negative effects of individualism. So individualism as weakened in-group social solidarity. And I think that that's actually a legitimate concern. But I'm wondering if the problem individualism or the excessive of modernity. So Steven Pinker wrote his book, Enlightenment, Now the Better Angels of Our Nature, and it elicited mostly positive reviews, some negative reviews, but in Michael Woodley of Meany's book, Modernity, Culture, and Social Decline, his critique of Pinker's ideas actually makes sense. So many of the critiques of Pinker are really bad, but Michael Woodley of Meany and Hans Hermann Hoppe, they have some really interesting critiques. They argue that economic progress is masking social decline and corrosive social relationships. So these are issues I'm interested in studying further.
Well, yeah, I wish you the best of luck in that endeavor.
They're controversial.
I would say that, I mean, my hunch, my gut feeling is that wealth increases happiness, but with marginal returns.
Yeah.
There is a breaking point in which wealth will not give you more happiness, right? I mean, if you're very poor and you get wealth, yeah, your happiness is going to increase significantly. But
yeah.
There is a breaking point in which more and more wealth will not make you happier. And I guess that historically you can also say the same. I mean, I would say life in the 1300s was probably very miserable. And today, and in the 1990s, life was much happier than in the Middle Ages. Fine. But the more wealth we have accumulated from the 1990s till today, maybe that has brought some setbacks, and it did make a difference in making us happier from medieval times to the end of the 20th century. But because wealth has diminishing results in its relationship with happiness, then maybe the issue is not now creating more wealth, but rather other more meaningful ways of being happy. I would agree with that.
Yes, like a stronger civic society.
Amongst other things, of course.
Yes, a stronger civic, little platoons, quite important.
Yes, and well, I mean, here I would grant a point to the left-wing critics of capitalism. I would say we spend too much time in front of screens. And
Yes.
I, being a parent, I am a parent, and I know what this is like, because I mean, it's hard for me to get my children to drop the tablets. But I mean, this is one amongst many other ills that we'll have to figure out how to solve. But I don't think the solution is to go back to the caves.
Hell no.
Have some environmentalists.
No degrowth for me. No degrowth for me whatsoever. And even though I am familiar with the literature on capitalism and free market, it was only recently that I was exposed to the argument that because of economic growth, we actually use fewer resources. We become more efficient, and efficiencies leads to greater gains. We use resources. So in America, energy usage in America has declined, like carbon emissions. So if you're really serious about the economy, you need more growth, not less.
Yeah, and I think environmental solutions cannot rely on degrowth. I mean, we just have to rely on innovation and getting cleaner energies. But I don't think the solution is to turn off the AC.
No, not at all. Yeah. Like degrowth. But speaking to you has been a pleasure, Gabriel.
Well, thank you as usual, Lipton, and I wish you the best, and I hope we can still we can keep these conversations.
Yeah, you can just keep sending me your pieces. So if I tell you the ones that I want. Yeah. So all right. Bye.
Very well. Very well. Okay. Bye bye.